Councilmember Walsh Russo. Approval of the minutes?
Yeah, I read them over. They look fine to
They
me.
look fine to me too, so we'll accept those. And then we have the Creek Trails discussion. I think that's coming last probably in our agenda, even though it's listed as first. Mike said he's not coming till 5:30.
5:30. So.
And then, so we could start with the request to incorporate Buena Vista.
Okay, so this was brought to us by a resident of Morgan Ave requesting that Buena Vista, which is a private street, be taken over by the city. Typically, the city would consider taking over a street if a new development goes in, or there's a new street created by a developer that is built to the city's specifications. We haven't had one of those in my time here. Buena Vista is not built to any city specifications, so what this committee had asked DPW to do was to consider what it would cost to potentially take that over and bring that up to the city's specs. So that's something that engineering has looked into.
Okay.
And
So this is an update.
right.
Great.
So it's a roughly 565-foot road, to make it 24 feet wide, which is wider than it is now. I'm not sure the width now, it's not that wide. So basically construct a new street, including a 50-foot radius cul-de-sac at the top. Maybe it could be smaller than that, and also that would require right-of-way acquisition. All of this would require right-of-way acquisition. The city has no right-of-way there now. It's privately owned property. So to do that, including subbase, light-duty pavement, partial closed drainage system, concrete curbs on both sides, would cost around $370,000 at least. That does not include street lighting, which typical city street has street lighting, so that would be something we have to add in if we wanted to do that. It also does not include the cost of right-of-way acquisition.
What is that?
And
Is that a
that would be determined based on
all these factors?
yeah, and we'd have to negotiate that with private property owners. Existing water and sewer, we have water and sewer along this private street now. It was installed in the late 80s, so for the most part that doesn't need to be upgraded in any way other than there's a suggestion to replace a sewer turnup with a manhole at the end. There are, for your information, there are 4 single-family homes on Buena Vista. 2 of them, their driveway is accessible from the end of Moffett Street, so they already, come onto or access the city street directly. So the improvement of Buena Vista wouldn't really affect their access.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, to develop the street would be serving 2 homes. And obviously, if the city takes over a street, added maintenance, forever would include snow and ice removal, pavement maintenance, rehabilitation, eventual reconstruction again, streetlight maintenance, replacement, curbs, catch basin cleaning, eventual replacement, storm line replacement, all of that. Anything we build, we have to maintain. We did not come up with a specific estimate on annual maintenance costs. Chris, you walked the site with Gino. Could you just talk about kind of what you observed as to the issues
So
out there?
basically, it's an existing gravel roadway. As Greg mentioned, serving 2 homes. There's
Where are you
adequate.
talking about?
Buena
I
Vista?
can't hear you.
Buena Vista?
Where?
Buena Vista?
It's on that.
So if you take a look, we have the schedule right there, and it's the second item. It's item B.
Right, but what is it?
It's a roadway.
It's a private
Oh.
road that they want to make into a city road.
Right.
So, it has adequate drainage on either side of the roadway that currently collects the drainage from the roadway and drains it into our existing infrastructure. I'm not sure, they had alluded to drainage issues, but I'm thinking of drainage issues related to neighbor rather than the roadway itself. So because the city takes the roadway over, it will not address the drainage issues that are, affecting one private property to the next private property. They did, build the homes on the hillside. There are existing springs there, so there's inherent trouble when you do that. Nothing really else to add to that.
Yeah, I think that was the impression I had from the presentation, that we got last month, was that it was intended to correct drainage issues.
Right.
It's the the main thing that I picked up from that.
There are roadside ditches on either side of the roadway and it's collecting the drainage adequately from the roadway itself.
So the problem then, as you reminded us, is the neighbor to neighbor, resident to resident, not the street itself.
That's my observation,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I've observed that as well in the
Yeah.
past. It's a wet hillside, there's some wet areas there where there's
Yeah.
groundwater.
That's what I had written down, the water runoff was the issue. Okay.
So,
Now, did-
okay.
I just was curious, Scott had mentioned possibly, or maybe it was Len, at the council discussion, that there was gonna be some conversation with residents about this. Is that correct? My memory correct?
There could be. There hasn't been, other than, I think when you walked the site, was Mr. Percentage there, or no? He wasn't there, okay.
There.
So we haven't,
So there hasn't
Discussed
been
it.
a conversation yet, okay. That was my question. Is it if anybody's talked to anybody?
Nope.
Okay. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that's basically what we have for tonight, and I think we're looking maybe for some feedback as to where do we wanna go from here. Does the council have any interest in taking over Buena Vista as a city street, developing it?
Right.
We have an idea of the costs, we can look into those further, the street lighting, what do we wanna do? We did not include any sidewalk on this street.
Is the street lighting mandatory? Is that something that is a requirement?
No.
Or
No, it's just a standard
Just
throughout the city. I think
generally,
every city street has
for
street lighting.
safety
for the most
reasons.
part.
Not for
Waivers on any
complete
don't.
streets really, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, sidewalk, drainage, trees, lighting. Try to provide it on both sides of the street for the entire lane.
do you have any questions?
I don't-
Comments?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the proposal to take over the street is not quite getting at, the issue that they had brought up, so I'm not sure if this is the right solution, it sounds like we might wanna, have more information, from those discussions. 'Cause I thought there were some conversations talked about, like you mentioned, or contact with the owners.
That some council members had
Yeah.
mentioned the possibility of going to
Yeah, I feel
talk to
like,
residents.
it was Len had said
Yes,
that
I
he
thought so
was,
too.
had contact with them, but okay.
But if the city taking over the street doesn't meet these concerns, then why was the city approached initially to do that? Wasn't that the proposal?
The resident on Morgan Ave who was here at the
Yes.
last meeting.
Right,
It was her opinion that the city taking over the street
Would
and
be helpful.
implementing drainage
Yeah.
improvements would help.
right. And I don't remember the arguments for that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back
She
a
had.
little, because
Her letter that, or
Yes,
I think it was an
Proposal.
email that she had read,
Oh, yeah.
that was emailed later, said that, just the general fact that there's been development uphill from her property would
Yep.
indicate that there's more drainage, more runoff than natural conditions, and therefore it would be impacted or improved by street drainage improvement.
Again, from my observations, there's a drainage ditch on both sides of the roadway. You get about 2/3 of the way down the hill, the drainage that's on the Morgan side of the roadway. The road tilts, so drainage continues to the other side.
yeah.
So it's collecting all the drainage
alright,
from the road itself.
So that's like important data here.
yeah, that's good to know.
Right, because that was the concern, I think,
Yep.
is that that process wasn't taking place, and so it is actually, so then perhaps the proposal for the city to take over is no longer useful. So what solutions could there be if it's not the city taking over? What,
I mean,
they have to
typically
work
when-
out with themselves, between themselves, yeah.
Yeah, typically when there's a, private property or,
Yeah,
drainage issue on your property,
yeah,
private individuals deal with that,
yeah,
with foundation drain or whatever it may be.
yeah. Hi, we're just talking about the Morgan Ave and Buena Vista. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we bring her up to speed?
Yeah,
So
so basically,
what's,
Chris,
what's
Good
the verdict?
information, actually.
yeah,
So you remember we had the Morgan Ave resident
Yep.
come and talk to us, and
Yeah.
she had a lengthy description of the problem with drainage on the
Yep.
street. And she thought that having the city take over the street itself
Yep.
in terms of maintenance and so forth would help with the drainage. And it turns out that first there's the cost of the city would have to accrue, and would have to absorb in order to take over the running of the street. And then there's the fact that it looks like, from Chris's observation, that the problem isn't really with the street itself in terms of drainage, it's with and between residents. So it's not, it's neighbor to neighbor rather than on the street itself. So the proposal to have the city then accept responsibility for the street seems like maybe it's not useful. That was the conversation
Okay.
just now.
Okay. That's it? Cool.
Yeah.
yeah, unless you had any other questions or thoughts on that proposal.
I think you answered them all in like the 30 seconds of being here, so.
Mhm.
Trying to get caught up to speed, was there anybody here that was speaking in the audience about that, or was that just, no?
No, she
Not
didn't
not
last
today.
time.
Last meeting, she was
Last
here,
meeting,
remember, I
right.
don't know if you remember.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like this time. Anybody's from Morgan.
Do we need to respond to the landowner's letter?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, as far as following up, do you want us to do that? Do you want that to come from the chair, or should we talk with Len as fifth ward council member? All the above?
Yeah. Because I recall Len saying
Mhm.
something about possibly speaking to some of the
Mhm.
residents, if I'm not mistaken, and so maybe following up with,
I think we have probably
Councilmember
follow up
Carson.
with Len, and
Yeah.
then, if you wanna draft a letter up, and you say that we discussed it as the quality of life, and what our findings were, and, you know, we don't think at this time that us taking it over is gonna alleviate the concerns that were brought forth to us.
and then if he wanted to follow up with the residents
Mhm.
himself, that could be really helpful, just to find out what they're thinking and what they diagnosed as the issue.
Okay.
So is that, my apologies for, I got hung up at work, I apologize for that. So we, wanna go to the brush and yard waste?
Yeah. Mike is gonna be running like 5:30.
And then I figured right after we get done
So-
with the brush waste, we can see if anybody in the audience is here to speak to us.
Before we do that, I just wanna, did we answer your question, Chris, about responding to the residents? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll draft a
Okay.
letter and send it to you guys as well as
Okay.
Councilmember Carson, and
Yep.
see if he wants to reach out directly or if he'd like us to.
Great,
Thank you.
okay, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I just wanted to double check, make sure we crossed our
Oh, yeah.
T's and dotted our I's.
It's hard when you come in a little bit late to try to take
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
over. So, thank you for stepping up, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Or stepping in, I guess is the better way of saying it.
I like stepping up.
Sure.
Let's go right to the brush and yard waste program.
Chris, did you wanna hand anything out or no? That's
I
okay.
never got a chance to print those out.
That's okay.
But, we are keeping track of our loads and the weights of those loads. We go to Casella every time we pick up brush, yard waste, Christmas trees, and the like, and we are weighing and keeping track of that. We keep track of the number, the vehicle that's being used. We've got the gross weight, the tare weight, and the total weight of the actual material that we keep track of. And we've been keeping track of that since November of last year. And I have an Excel spreadsheet for my street superintendent, Todd Cleveland, to keep track of that. I think we'd like to continue with that through a full year. So we have full, good data on what kind of brush material we're bringing back. Because it's kind of gauging what we've done so far, because we've been out, everything we keep track of, we've been outside of the, brushing yard waste pickup. So I think it's very important that we do that during the April through October period of this coming spring, summer and fall.
Is that usually the heaviest time of year that we have that you are responsible for the
I would say
collection?
April and then October, November are our biggest pickup times. Everything else in between is, grass clippings and storm damage that may occur.
Yeah.
This is just, we're keeping track of just what we pick up from residents or houses, parcels.
This is.
Not like city, not like the city park, if there's a storm or something like that.
No, this is everything.
This is
Any
everything.
material we pick up. So it's resident, it's city tree pickup, it's any storm damage. And in the Excel spreadsheet, he's noting what it's from, so that if it was from storm damage, he knows the storm damage.
So you got it in there, so we can decipher resident versus city.
Yes.
Okay.
Like
Guess
we
I didn't
haven't,
ask it the right way.
he hasn't, because when we started this end of November, there was no more resident collection. It was, so there's storm debris, tree trimmings, Christmas trees. So then if we continue this into April and throughout the year, we'll have, we can break it down, wards 1 through 4 picked up this week, wards 5 through 8 picked up the next week. I think we'll get a lot of
We'll
good
make sure
data.
we separate that information.
I mean,
We're still bi-weekly, right, for the wards? Or is it once a month for the wards?
it's once a month, after April.
Correct.
April is bi-weekly, and it's once a month until,
The pickup schedule remains
October.
the same as it has in the last, since I've been here. So the last 3 years will be the same. This year will be the same as the last 3 years.
Okay. So we're gonna get a good healthy dose of data this year,
Yes.
which I think is important.
Yeah.
People pretty compliant, making sure they're in the paper bags and,
If they're not compliant, we leave them a note and we don't pick it up. So there are weight limits, there's, the fact that it can't be on the roadway, it's supposed to be on, behind the curb. There are various things that, material might not be picked up because it might be in violation of our brushing our waste, rules and regs. But for the most part, I'd say everyone's compliant.
So are we waiting on more information then before we?
I think my sense from the council in our discussions was that there's not really an appetite to be charging residents for brushing yard waste pickup or drop off. So, other than potentially collecting or allowing commercial drop off for a fee in the future, there's not really a revenue opportunity that we're looking at. So it's really more, how efficient are we, or could we be more efficient with our pickup? So collecting some data will maybe help us be better informed. Go ahead, Chris.
We're talking about maybe combining services with the town, allowing them to dump at our site, so there would be a fee with that if we chose to do some kind of agreement with the town.
and I think we're also looking at summer, like, how much do we normally pick up during the summer versus, so,
Right, so if we have the data, then that might tell us, oh, maybe we don't need to pick up as often during the summer, or something else.
now, how are we doing with the, like, if, say I come down, sign out the key to put in, am I supposed to go through Casella's the way in, or are we still just going off and just dropping in our,
Really haven't addressed that.
You don't have to, go through.
I know, that's, I'm talking about.
You're talking about the weight of the material.
Oh,
We talked about having we could talk with Casella again in the county about having a roll-off container where residents would have to go drop off into that container, which would then be periodically taken over and dumped in our pile work, so it could be weighed. That could be something we talk about with them.
I think we need something that can be, monitored, so that like on the weekends, we don't have someone that's showing up as a contractor dumping material, because that was the issue we were having. So I think if it's controlled by Casella and get them to agree to that, we can, let people dump it, put one of our dumpsters out there, they can pick it up, dump it off at Casella, and then we can pick it up once a week weigh it, and then dump it in our site.
Maybe put a camera on the side of the maintenance garage or whatever right there, and put the dumpster there for the weekend, and then you can take it over, weigh it first thing Monday.
Well, if we were able to partner with Casella and the county to have it within their enclosed fenced-in area, so it would be accessible whenever they're open, which is more hours than we're open now. So they'd be open on Saturdays where we're not now.
Right, you'd have them till noon.
Yeah, right now it's not at all, so it would be an improvement. Right, we're 7 to 3:30, so are they during the week.
Yep.
But then 7 or 8 to noon on Saturday.
Okay. No, I'm open, I just, was curious if we're trying to track that data too. I mean, I know we got them signing in and out,
Yeah.
so we know about how many come in, but.
No, it's a good thing you're bringing that back up, because we have to have a conversation with Casella again about that.
Any other questions about this? Okay, looking forward to the data. Let me just write this note down and then.
Scott, does any of this need to go to council, do you think?
I don't think, I'll just tell them,
Oh, yeah.
tell them like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
report.
in the report, kind of the same with the request from us taking over the city street as well. And maybe when the letter goes, Greg, if you want to CC the whole council in on it, so that they all have it. That might be the best thing to do. All right, I'm gonna open up public for a little bit because we're waiting for one other person, so, is anybody that likes, yes? Could you just state your name and,
Okay, hi, my name is Lisa Honorato. I'm in Ward 4, and I've spoken to KT about this issue. I want to address the speeding on Spruce Street. I live on Spruce Street. Is this appropriate to bring this up?
yes?
Okay, so I live Honorato, Onorato. Thank you. You're welcome.
You said
so-
Spruce Street, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I live in between Ivy and Myrtle. And so Spruce is set up so that there are traffic signals and stop signs, like on East Street, then you have Maple Street, then you have Elm Street, then you have Ford Street, and then there's this large runway between Ford and Brook. And I know there's been a traffic study like 2 years ago, and I can attest to this. Cars have been recorded going up to 80 miles an hour in that stretch. I would say 50 miles, especially when they're coming from Brook Street, going down toward Ford, because there's a little hill there. And so I lost a cat 12 years ago. I got hit by a car. I took my 2 cats indoors, and they were across the street. Lost 2 cats. And when I went to speak with Katie, it was another neighbor's cat was hit right in front of my house and crawled on my driveway in time. So I said, okay, enough's enough, it could be a child someday. And so I was speaking to my neighbors, they all agree it's a huge problem. And we thought maybe if we could get a 4-way traffic, like a stop sign, like at the intersection of Spruce and Myrtle, that might get people to slow down in that area. I know you have to worry about, like, if we slow down traffic on Spruce, is that gonna create issues for Center Street? But Center Street does have a stop sign in between. They have that intersection by Church, which kind of breaks up that speeding. So I don't know if there's a different solution. Katie, when I was speaking with her, thought it was also a problem with people trying to get onto Spruce Street, like from Myrtle, there's visibility issues. So maybe it would solve that as well.
Can I, is it okay if I also jump in?
Go ahead.
I'm here to speak on this as well. So, yeah, I'm here, even as a representative of my ward, it's not, he said not the only, or even the first person to bring this up to me. It's pretty unanimous among all the residents of that stretch that they would like to see more, and also some folks who live like on those smaller side streets on either side, that they would like to see, a stop sign to break up that long stretch. I had mentioned this to you all, that I would be coming to talk about this because, I know that sign is not a perfect solution, but I think that if everyone who lives in the immediate vicinity, as well as people who travel that route regularly, are asking for it, I think it would, in my opinion, we should honor that unless there's a compelling reason not to. So I would love for the committee to look at the data from the last speed study, talk about traffic calming measures, both short-term and long-term. I know there are kind of bigger projects that could happen that could slow down traffic, like street reconstruction, but I want something to happen in my lifetime, and it seems like a unanimously supported stop sign somewhere in the middle there. I know Myrtle has been brought up. Myrtle is trouble, like when you're coming down the hill. I had brought this up before. I think you removed the parking spot there with the sight lines in either direction. Same thing from Highland down, and as well as Central, either down or up, because that one converges. I know, I've heard that there are people who, won't travel in that direction to go across Spruce Street because they just can't see, or they don't feel like their reflexes are quick enough that if somebody was coming. In addition to, and it's a completely residential neighborhood. There's no reason why there needs to be really through traffic through there, in a way that would be impeded by another stop sign. So I think, I would love it if we could figure this out for that neighborhood. So that's why I'm here, and I don't expect you to solve it today, but I'm here to support Lisa and those residents, and if we need to come forward with a petition, we can do that. But if you wouldn't mind just taking a look at it and see if there's something that we can do there for them, that would be great. Thank you.
Cause they talk faster than I can, right, Greg? Did you get all the streets?
It's Spruce Street between Myrtle and Ivy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Spruce there.
Cause I heard like Brook and,
Yeah,
So-
Yeah, those are
bunch
on,
of
those
side
are long,
streets,
those are,
Brook,
they cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
Myrtle and
Iris,
Ivy
they
are right
come
next to each
out.
other.
Yep.
But there's nothing to stop
Myrtle and
traffic,
Ivy.
basically,
Okay.
for a
Yeah.
while.
Because
On
it's,
Spruce.
what is it, between like, Ford Avenue probably? Is that
Yeah.
the last one? Cause
Ford and Brook.
Okay.
There's-
Yeah,
You
those
go
are the
like
two
3 or 4
ends.
blocks.
Yeah,
and then
that's what I
there's
thought.
Nothing there, and every other block
Has-
on Spruce has a
Yeah,
stop sign. so
stop,
it's
stop,
kind of
stop,
like-
stop, yep.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I heard the argument made that, if you are stopping, then you're kind of just like flooring it to make up the time. I've just been obviously thinking about this in my travels around the city, living on Center Street that has a stop sign everywhere. That may be true, but I think that the longer the distance between stop signs, the more you are willing to floor it, and I think that's why we're seeing that, that stretch as something where people are trying to make up the time that they've lost on the other end, so, yeah, I appreciate you looking at it, being willing to do that.
I know we don't have it tonight, but can we pull data maybe for the next?
Yeah, we've
Quality of life,
shared,
and then this
we did
maybe
that, I
for-
think it was last summer we did this speed study, if I
I was gonna
remember
say,
right.
this-
I think it was
Might have been two summers ago.
because I remember Dave, it was planning commission, and Dave and Mark Beatty were still in council
Yeah.
at the
We've
time.
been working on conducting surveys throughout the city,
Yeah.
speed studies, so I don't
Yeah.
know, without looking at the map, I'm not sure where you're at for that location. But,
Is it-
That's what I have here.
Oh, is it?
Mhm.
Does that have to do with it?
Yep, it's from this summer.
Oh,
what was
what is
the,
that from?
Oh, that's from this committee.
From this committee?
out of
I think it
curiosity,
said
what was the,
September.
what was the 85th percentile speed?
It was like 27 and 26.
So, long-term, I think we should plan for raised crosswalks, street bump outs, that kind of thing. Short-term, I think a traffic study needs to be completed, not just a speed radar traffic study, but actually hiring a consultant to evaluate that length of roadway and see what they recommend. We could, I'm hesitant to just throw up stop signs without having a consultant weigh in their opinion.
The consultant wasn't part of the East Street and
Buggy,
Chestnut Street, and we didn't do that with Spruce. We didn't have the consultant look at that?
That was not asked.
No,
Okay.
we haven't yet, we can't. But any time you implement like an intersection control, like a stop sign, traffic signal, requires a traffic study to justify that.
Mhm.
So that's what the consultant would be for.
So what's the timeline we're looking at by the time we get the consultant?
Depends on-
We've been complaining about this for years.
Years.
Yeah.
It's like one of the first things I heard about when I started in 2020.
Well, I mean, we already started. I mean, that's why we started
Yeah.
the speed studies. That's why we went out and got the second box and stuff like that, was because we're getting it throughout the city, and we pushed that
Yeah.
hard as a council to get the second box up so that we could get all the data speed-wise.
And this was one of
Yeah.
the locations that
Yeah.
really prompted that overhaul, kind of just
Yeah.
like a comprehensive look.
And I know, was it the police department's the one that puts them up, and then they come take them down, and then
They
they
report
download all
them
the
to us.
data to DPW, and then we get it. So, I mean, we have started. I know it's not what you wanted to hear, but we really have started. So I guess the next thing is if it doesn't feel like that's working, is I guess we have to come up with some other ideas too. I mean, I know at one time we had a speed trailer, but that thing is probably older than I am now, so.
Are there particular times of the day when it's worse? Is it just like first thing in the morning when everyone's going to school, college, or at nighttime when everyone's all done?
I'm not home a lot. When I noticed it, it seems, I don't know, like 1, 2.
Lunchtime, or
Yeah,
after lunch?
it does seem, I
Is,
was gonna say college students, but I don't know that that's true.
Craig, is there a way that
It happens in the
maybe-
summer as well.
I know our police department's short and busy, but is there a way that maybe we could ask if they could increase patrols in the area for a short time and see what they're observing, and maybe just their presence there might help?
We could ask that, yeah.
I mean, that's a short-term solution. That's not an overall, because, I mean, we only got just so much employees to go around for everything.
What about like the sign that they have like right by Nick's Diner that, is this what you were talking about, that says you're going 37 or whatever, and it tells you your speed?
Yeah, we used to have a trail, they used to have a trailer that had like speed limit 30, and then it would log in and flash if you were going, but, I mean, I think we just surplus that, because I think that was antiquated, but.
I mean, we could put up a speed sign. I haven't priced one out in a while, but we could do that. Is there one way or the other that's more of a concern? Is the direction flow from east to west more of a concern, or west to east?
I think it's coming from Brook to Ford.
Yeah, west to east.
I think it's coming
Okay, so
down
west to
that
east.
hill.
Okay.
Yeah, west to east, I think. But it goes both ways. But in front of my particular house, that's just the store. I hear them tear them off after that.
I'm okay with pricing one out. I mean, if it,
Yeah. Maybe we could do that.
I mean,
What would the residents like to see happen? What are some solutions that people have talked about?
The most popular solution that I've heard is a stop sign.
Stop sign, any
In that
particular
stretch.
location that they would prefer?
Myrtle, I think,
Yeah.
for my stretch.
Yeah,
Myrtle.
so I drive that way, to get home from work, and I think personally that at Ivy and Highlands might be good, because it's like right at the bottom of the hill, and it kind of bisects those areas a little bit more. But, I mean, yeah, just really somewhere.
That makes sense, cause it's kind of like halfway,
Mhm.
but they're not like this. It's
Yeah.
like one comes and the other is here, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like where the stop sign would be.
Yeah, it's four-way, they just don't
Yeah.
like quite
Yeah.
line up.
But that would actually be better, I
Yeah.
think, if that
In
makes
terms of
sense.
calming people down, going down the hill, like, if you stop at the bottom of the hill, that's kind of it, you
Yeah.
know, and then just go another short couple blocks to the next one. Yeah,
Yeah, that
okay.
would be my preference, actually, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but
What
it's
was
pretty
that?
unanimous.
What was that?
Highland and
Highland.
Ivy and Spruce.
It's just kind of a weird one.
It's, they're not exactly across from each other.
Yeah.
You see how?
But
Hey, what
churches like
about-
that and Central,
Yeah.
Great, what about
Four
cutting,
way.
you know, like on the interstate, we got the rumble strips?
So,
Does something like that work or not really?
Yeah.
I see. Oh, I
So
see,
they're
'cause
like-
that's.
yeah.
I don't know if that, like what we used to have on River Street Service Road,
Yeah, you know, you used to go, I mean,
perpendicular to the direction of travel.
yeah, so kinda you hit the rumble and you're like, oh, what's,
Oh.
you know, slow you down.
We'd have to look into that,
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, whatever the solution, like, I know that ultimately the idea is to design our streets in a way, maybe that's part of it. I think the, minimum, extension on behalf of everyone for the desired outcome is what's being asked at this time, so, I know there have been times when we've said that, and I'm not familiar with the statute that requires us to prove, for lack of a better word, that we've given thought to where we're putting stop signs. You know, we've had conversations in the past that, you know, going over options and having a conversation sometimes is, proof that we've given it thought and that we're not just arbitrarily throwing things up. You know, we've done now 2 speed studies in that location. There's still concern from the residents. We're having a conversation now. I mean, I know that a consultant is preferred, but that sounds like a very expensive way to get a stop sign up, so I don't know if there's anything that, I don't know if there's a more straightforward way, you know, to address the issue, especially if we're concerned that this won't actually address the issue, right? It's like the taking over Buena Vista. If we do this and we've spent a consultant on it and we put the stop sign and it doesn't slow down traffic, we have a concern that it might not, you know, then we put a lot of money into it not working. And I don't want that to be the case either. Like, I just want to be able to provide for slow traffic, basically.
What this really boils down to, and I like Dave Mersey going in on it, is liability. Say we put 4-way stop in and it causes an accident, and there's maybe, you know, it's a lethal accident, someone passes away.
Right.
We're liable for putting those stop signs in without having a engineer look at it.
Okay.
So it's very important that we have it evaluated by a licensed consultant to make sure we're doing the correct thing.
Okay. Thank you for that.
How many is there a lot of crosswalks in this area that we're talking about? I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, there aren't.
Not painted.
None?
Right?
No, not painted. And maybe that's a great.
It's, yeah, it really does, when you're driving that stretch, it really just feels like a, you know,
Like a
similar
runway.
to East Street in that way, like.
Kinda like a
there's
highway, like,
nothing
you
to
know.
stop you from just.
Yeah.
Cause I was wondering what if we put in some, you know, I'm sure we'd have to do something great, like crosswalk, maybe put signs up.
There should be, I don't know what actually is painted right now, but there should be.
Right.
Yeah, historically, Myrtle Ave has 2 crosswalks on either side of it. I believe at Ivy, there is a curb ramp that should be painted. Same with Brook.
So we
Central.
have problems
Central
getting
as well.
The
company.
curb ramps are there, I just don't know if I can look tomorrow.
There may need to be new pavement markings installed, but
So,
there
quick
were in the
question.
past. Excuse me, sorry. I was just saying there should be crosswalks painted there. They were in the past, maybe perhaps they're not.
Okay,
Where the curb ramps are should be painted.
okay. So just quick question, what's to stop us from getting a consultant, an engineer to evaluate? What's the,
It's just money.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have about $30,000 of budget for engineering for the entire year, and that's to evaluate these types of things.
Yeah.
It's for whatever engineering issues may come up, whether it's evaluation of traffic, intersection, whether it's, I may need a structural evaluation of a retaining wall, or failing culvert, or something like along those lines. That's what that money is intended for. I am currently awaiting a quote for the intersection of Bugby and East Street
Okay.
Yeah.
evaluation. I had a price, but after reviewing it and consulting with Greg, we decided to make some revisions to their quote. We had intended to talk about that tonight, just it wasn't ready. But he's asking for a quote for this as well.
I know the last time we did this,
Yeah.
we ended up putting like 3 or 4 or 5 different streets out there because we got a cheaper price. Is there,
You'll bundle like a
Like
package.
put
Yeah,
it together,
like a
yeah.
package, because they
And
were
a package
coming all in
deal.
one shot, they might as well, while they're here,
Yeah,
we
that's-
have more streets than
Yeah.
just
I was
this
gonna
two.
ask that, if you have, there is a question from residents in my ward about East and
Mm.
Bugby.
Yeah,
That's the one
And
that Chris
Meadowbrook.
has already,
Yeah,
yes.
that one we already have in the works, that's what he's referencing, yeah.
like if we had, like say, hey, we got like 4 or 5 I want you to look at, what's the, you know,
Yeah.
I don't wanna spend all $30,000 in traffic study.
I didn't say I wanted to spend on traffic study either, I get it, I just was wondering if,
I have things that pop up.
Yeah.
We're only 2 months into the new year,
Yeah.
and I have many things that pop up. You'd be surprised where I need an engineer
Yeah.
to
So-
get involved.
Yeah.
What
I
does
can
it?
get, I can get you quote for this and bug me and we'll see where we're
Okay.
at.
Do we have an idea yet, or
The
do
price
you
of
not
the
wanna?
version is about 6,
Okay, all right, thank you.
so you want.
6 for one,
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
the state prevailing wage.
Consultants, it's not, prevailing wage rate is related to construction.
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm just,
all right,
okay,
that's a good metric
Um,
to know as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you for
Yep,
sharing.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have to come back to you, because I promised you 1 minute, and we've now been about 20 minutes, so,
That's okay, I just
what's your name
wondering,
again?
Wendy Decker, I live in the first ward on North Fifth Street.
Welcome.
I'm not here about the leaves, but I am wondering why you have to get a key to take your bags. I mean, it just, I have no problem with taking my stuff down there, but it's a pain in the ass, to be quite honest, to have to stop and get a key and then go and lock the gate and then lock the gate back up and.
Well, I complain about it too, and Chris can tell you, because I also complain about we don't do it on the weekends, and I think we should have a
Yeah.
dumpster out there,
They used to
but then
do
we get,
that, yeah.
but we got contractors that have been dropping stuff off, and during the weekend and stuff, so that's why the dumpster got taken out. Getting a key, you gotta sign in, they give you the key to go unlock it at, you know, because they wanna make sure contractors aren't just going down there to drop their stuff off.
Well, what would they be, you mean like?
The tree
trees?
guys, yeah, the tree guys, the lawn care people, the grass
And
clippings.
they're bringing things from outside the city.
Outside the city.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and we have to process, so what, we spend about $20,000 a year grinding all of our material. So, then we end up being grinding things from outside of the city, and city taxpayers should be paying for that.
Right.
So
Well,
that's why we're
that
regulating
makes
so
it a
big.
little clearer. I'm not actually here about that. I'm here about the bicycles on the sidewalks.
Okay.
And 80% of the people that are, the code is 12 and under. 80% of the people that are riding their bicycles on the sidewalk are courteous. It's the 20% that don't slow down and don't get out of the way. I'm 77 years old. I don't have the reaction I had even 5 years ago. And we tried to address this when Michelle Frazier was there, correct? We tried to address it when Luke was here, and it keeps, the can keeps getting kicked down the road, and nothing gets resolved.
Okay.
Somebody's gonna get hurt one day.
So,
I assured Wendy that we did talk about it in our last meeting.
did.
But, and I also said, if, something like this, can also take some input from, an advocate, who really knows what's going on with the issue.
so what we can possibly do, just thinking off the top of my head, is we got a reporter in the audience. We can ask the reporter to do as we get closer to time where bicycles will start coming out more, is to do an article reminding everybody to stay off. You're supposed to ride in the road, you're not supposed to be on the sidewalks. We get word out that way. Maybe we can do something on our website. Maybe the police can put something up on the Facebook site. Trying to remember to urge people, please, don't get on the sidewalks with your bikes. We've also had, because we also had that with the, I call them the hoverboards. I don't know what the title of them are, but the electrical battery board that people ride. We've had those complaints too. I think maybe if we just start a campaign like that, as we get a little bit warmer weather and they start coming out, see how that works.
Well, we were able to get something done about the race they have in Wilbur Park. I think think it's the end of May or something like that, and they finally started putting signs up so that people know not to go into the park, the upper part where the pavilion is and to the high school, because it's dangerous, you know, there's people coming, bicycles coming down up the hill. And, it's a safety issue, no matter whether they're on the street or whether they're in Wilton Park, and it's not being addressed by the city.
Well, vehicle and traffic law, they have rights to be on, the bicycles have the right to be on the road.
Hey, and you know, I have no problem with
So-
that. It's the people that drive, that ride the bicycles, like, I don't wanna say they're crazy, but, they don't slow down, they don't move out of the way. If you're up against a wall, there's no place for you to go. There's, issues, there's people that are very, very nice and very willing to do whatever, you know, to get out of your way.
One thing we have now that we haven't had in a while is the, I call it the bike club, it's not that, it's the trails,
Susquehanna
Sus-
Greenway.
yeah, that, but the mountain biking
Yeah.
association and stuff. They're very proactive and stuff, and we can get some words to them, and I'm sure they can put out and help out. Yeah, I know that's kind of towards the trails, but they have more connections within that maybe they can help us out getting the word out. So, yeah, Bill.
I gotta chime in a little bit. First of all, they will send out an email, a mass email to 250 reminding people for bike etiquette, absolutely. My question to you is, are you sure they're not, like battery operated bikes?
No, these are bikes, these are people that, these are adults that are on bikes.
Bicycles
I haven't
and
seen more.
battery up, right? They look very, very similar.
Oh,
And
it could be then.
to
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be,
an untrained eye, you can't tell the difference.
could be.
And they go much faster, so I'm wondering if that might be part of the issue when you have a bicycle that now goes 25 miles an hour, and doesn't make any noise.
Yeah, and that's
It's
why,
a whole new world we're in, kind of thing.
as I thought, maybe if we started this campaign between the press and, you know, on our Facebook and on our city website, and stuff like that, and I know I'm gonna be yelled at because I put more work on our clerk's office, but, you know, doing the website, but if we get some of the words out, you know, and remind them, hey, battery operated bikes, nobody can hear you,
Yeah,
please.
and they're
You
so
know.
common now that,
Yeah.
it's an issue
Yeah.
everywhere, in every city now.
So,
I think we've brought this topic up a few times in our committee, which is to say that I think one of the reasons we have to explore is why are people using sidewalks?
Mhm.
It's because they don't necessarily feel safe riding in traffic.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about, you know, how do we,
I can
move
absolutely
forward.
see both sides of it.
right, we need to move forward and think, I think, about the fact that bicycles are vehicles and they should probably be given lanes of some sort so that there is that option for people so they feel safe riding in a road. So that's one of the things, I know we've brought this up as a topic, you know,
People can
Really
get very
consistently.
nasty and very aggressive when you ask them to slow down.
yep.
Yeah, and well, I was just gonna say, I know that I've brought up the issue specifically about the electronic, or the, you know, electric bikes, you know, and the scooters and things, and I know, you know, in our ward, I do see quite a few of them, you know, especially in the summer, right? You know, like a lot of folks on different kinds of scooters and stuff that they ride over to the gas station and, you know, stuff like that. So I know that there is quite a lot of that activity on Main Street, I think is especially where you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I'm walking dogs.
Yeah.
and, you know, you can't get, so there's some places where you cannot get away from them. And I
Right.
have one of my dogs is reactionary, and if I could get into somebody's driveway or get up on somebody's lawn or something like that, I don't have a problem doing that, but there are times you can't get away from these people.
Right, like areas where we had the retaining walls directly up against the
Right.
sidewalk and
Right.
things like that, right? Yeah.
That's written in our code, right? 12 and under, and over that, or are we going off of V&T?
It's in the city code.
City code, yeah.
So, now that I don't know how to enforce that, I mean, we don't,
Police officers is the only chance to enforce that. I
because
think.
that's not something that the code ordinance, code person could enforce, right?
I don't think so. I think that's more of a police thing. No, I think you asked, Elaine, but are you talking specifically about Main Street in the East End?
Well,
Or,
that's where I live, that's where I
Yeah.
walk my dogs, I walk my dogs on Main Street to get to Wilbur Park.
okay,
So, and I live on North Fifth, so that's the area that I can get to the park.
okay.
But, if you're going the other way, You know, 80% of the people are
Right.
very nice, and they'll
It's the
move, they'll
minority.
slow down, and they'll
Yeah.
do what they're supposed to do, but.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people that are cyclists would prefer to ride the road and probably, I'm
Yeah.
guessing, aren't the ones that are giving you the problem.
Right.
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 I
I
think
think-
we should probably have to have like a pretty significant conversation as council about maybe changing infrastructure in the city to accommodate what we want to encourage, which is, you know, cycling as actual transit.
Yeah.
I think people in Oleana have forgotten that there are still people that like to walk, that have animals that they wanna walk, and everything now is, you know, get in your car and go.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I know like with the complaints coming, if you sit back and thinking about it, they're very ward specific, like you don't, not every ward has this issue. It's like first ward's always seemed to been hammered with this issue, where, you know, some other wards haven't had this issue, so it's, how do we craft something up for that ward and maybe have the first ward be the trial on it and try to do one of those, what do you call them, the shared lane, you
Yeah.
know? And see how it goes. You know, that's some striping, I don't think I would say it, but I don't think that'll break the bank. But
Yeah,
maybe
we-
try that.
We striped lines to create bike lanes on the east end of Main Street several years ago. There was a section right between, just past Draper, around Draper, heading into heading toward Main Street, or downtown rather, that could not be striped as a bike lane because at the time there was a hairdresser, I believe, working out of one of the houses there that didn't want to have the parking go away, and the council agreed with that and kept parking along that whole stretch. So there's, you know, if that changed, that would make it easier to have a continuous bike lane. Because I think it's difficult when you have a bike lane that just ends and starts and ends. As a, you know, someone who's not entirely comfortable riding on the road. So we have to think about that, and then maybe we're doing more than painting the line, we paint the bike symbols, we talked about putting some of the green strips here and there. To paint the entire thing green is just cost prohibitive, I think, for the city of Oneana. But there are things that we can do to make it a little bit more obvious that there is a bike lane and that, you know, would encourage people to use it.
Just,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. What's your name?
Aiden,
What is it? I'm sorry.
Aiden,
Aiden?
maybe just paint like parts of the bike lane that's like say Tilton Avenue, like paint that as like stripes, green, so that it's more like visible
Yeah.
when you're coming onto, like Main Street.
Yeah.
Cause, the big problem is we do have that the first ward has the biggest bike lane infrastructure, but it's just so poorly marked and it's not protected. So people in cars can easily just swerve into the bike lane without even knowing it, because the only part I've really seen that is marked as a bike lane is up by where, construction was by Rose Ave a few months ago.
Yeah.
And then they put the, bike lane symbol, and that's the only part I've seen that has bike lane symbols.
Yeah.
Aiden, I know, has developed plans and could even, has, you know, been looking into infrastructure, you know, so, yeah.
Yes, Katie.
Oh gosh, I wanted to say two things about that. And one is, in addition to painting them a different color, which I think is a great visual cue, I wonder about those stripes, similar to what you were saying, that are like, slightly raised, right? That kind of let you know that you're veering over. They make them, right, that are, what's the word? Like signs are.
Like reflective, are you talking about the reflective strips that are
Reflective
kind of,
strips,
I
right.
know what you're talking about.
And those maybe even in like little, you know, blocks might be helpful. I don't know what the cost is of something like that. I'm just
They're
throwing out
probably
ideas
the
in the
most
room.
expensive option because it's not just tape, it's like, it's applied when the asphalt put down,
Oh,
so it like melts into the
So it's a
aggregate.
part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all
all
right.
right.
So that's good to know, but,
You know, the other thing I wanna mention to you guys is we have a very difficult time getting, contractors that do pavement markings to come to the city and give us bid. We really only have one contractor that will bid our projects, and they do not do multicolored paint.
Oh, no.
So,
Okay.
like they'll
But maybe
do like
symbols?
handicap parking spots, that kind of thing, small stuff, but not large areas. In fact, they won't even do epoxy paint, which is the last 2 to 3 years, we provide, in our bids we put them together, there's standard paint, there's epoxy paint, there's the heat tape that I was mentioning. We put quotes in there for all of it, but we only had one guy that responded, and he will not bid the epoxy, and he won't bid the colored paint. So I think we're big enough to have pavement markings,
Yeah.
but we're too small
small
for the
to-
bigger guys to come and
yeah.
do work for us.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll buy you a paint
That's
machine,
our core
Chris, and we'll
problem.
watch you go out and paint the lines.
Yeah,
I think
we can find
You wanna
numbers.
buy me a paint machine?
Yeah.
Buy me a paint machine?
Aren't we the quality of life here, or should we be out there?
It might save money if we're having problems getting, it might be having our own paint
Some
machine. and
council
then-
members could volunteer.
Yeah, I'll go out.
Just
Well, if it's
saying.
needed work, we might get in trouble. I just wanted to say one other thing, which is that, I think that Mr. Planell, for example, made a good important point, which is that, like, manual bikes and e-bikes are two totally different things. And I don't know off the top of my head where our code stands on motorized things with wheels, but we may want to just look at that legislation and completely prohibit those from sidewalks in all areas of the city. So that maybe something.
That's one thing I was gonna,
consider.
I know Greg likes to go out and find, other municipalities, so instead of reinventing the wheel, say, how are they dealing with it, maybe there's something that we can,
Yeah.
pass or something like that, but it all comes back to enforcement, how do you enforce it with the limited staffing that we have? It's great to pass things, but if you can't enforce it, then you're just compounding on the issue. So, alright, yes, Aiden.
This is a question toward Chris. How much would a plastic bollards cost to put them on the bike lanes?
Plastic bollards to
Yeah.
delineate between, in the pavement itself, that causes an issue for plowing. So we really can't put anything that's raised above the pavement, because that causes an issue of plowing.
They're about $100 a ballard, I can tell you that, for
They're
plastic
actually-
ones, and they're fixed. And then if you get the ones that you can take down, they're even more expensive, because you gotta drill into the blacktop, and then you got all other issues with the freezing and thawing, and, yeah.
I didn't expect to potentially come out of this meeting with a potential equipment quote.
So,
I didn't write that down as an action.
well, no, I said it kind of jokingly, but I'm actually kind of serious too. If we're having problems getting people to bid on this, and this is something, we might have to look at this, so we take it on and keep it in-house, and nothing says we can't maybe get some money from the town and do stuff that they needed to be done, or other municipalities around us, like a village or something. But I think maybe if we got like maybe a couple municipalities that go into this, or even maybe the county, so like a shared, buying equipment and stuff, I know the state's been big on that. And,
Well, I think what we could do is, as a committee, we could actually have an agenda item that talks specifically about bike lanes and kind of what would that mean. One of the questions then would emerge, how do we delineate bike lanes from regular traffic? Is that even necessary? It sounds like it is. I think it is, for people to feel comfortable.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
Especially in that long stretch of Main
All right.
Street.
So that's maybe a topic forthcoming
Yeah,
that we should
Bike
tackle
lanes.
as its own topic. Because we
Yeah.
keep,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Feels
we
like
do,
we
and like-
talk about it enough.
We have, and even like the suggestion to, do some kind of regulation around, electric, bikes and, other modes of transportation, we brought that idea up, so.
Yeah, that's
It
another
seems like it's
component.
something that, we can just put a little more research and time into,
Right.
so
because it sounds like,
I know you're busy, Greg, like all of our staff is. Maybe next month's not realistic, but what about April's meeting? To put this back on for? Did I give you guys enough time to maybe research what other municipalities do? What ordinances are out there? How are they addressing it? What if we did invest in a paint machine and we started taking that on, how would we handle that as a city? And would we, potentially have to add, or what service would we have to give up to potentially do that? Because I don't, you know what I'm saying?
So that's a couple things. There's the ordinance evaluation,
Yeah.
there's bicycle network
Yeah.
infrastructure, and then there's paint machine. Which, do you wanna look at all three of those, or?
Yeah, I just
focus
wanna
on
have,
one
yeah, if we're
first?
gonna have this as a topic, let's have all the topics, or would you rather push it to maybe like June? I mean, I know we're not gonna solve it quickly, I mean, would June be better to be able to get all that stuff around, or
I don't know that.
May,
Yeah.
April?
What are we looking at, March? You were saying
Yeah.
next month, we could do April, maybe.
Yeah,
April.
I think that would be enough
Okay.
time. Because I'm not even sure how much we have on, you know, for next month either, but that would be, I think, enough time.
Yeah, I was just thinking about their time, because
Yeah.
they still got the rest
Yeah.
of the city and stuff that
Mhm.
they're trying to do, and, you know.
Okay.
We don't have to put it all on Greg too. I could actually do some research on this as well, so.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we all can, and
Yeah.
bring your stuff together, I just
Yeah.
like, I know Chris probably has the means for the paint machine and where to
Yeah.
look and get a price for that.
Yeah, the
You know,
ordinance,
ordinance, I think we
Yeah.
could probably, but,
Aiden has already provided me information.
There we go.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I could do a presentation on different types of bicycle infrastructure and then
Okay.
relative costs and that sort of
Okay.
thing.
that would be great.
okay, and then,
Traffic calming, we might as well make it complete streets sort of thing. It's
yeah,
not
I was just
bicycle,
thinking
we're
about
talking
maybe
speeding.
like, you know, our speed issues, maybe this will help slow
Oh,
it down
that's
too, if we
true.
start putting these lanes out, cause you're shortening the, you know, narrowing the road, not shortening the road, but you're narrowing the road.
right,
Yeah.
it all comes back to
You know.
that complete streets, you know, piece, so.
And the Lettuce Highway project includes walkability along the portion that's now currently for cars. Does that also include a bike lane? Like bike
It's
lanes?
a multi-use path, yep.
It's a multi-use path, okay. So that's great,
Okay,
in our future,
yes, so May, what did we say, April or March? April,
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 Right, that'll give you time to.
yeah.
April.
So by multi-use, it means that you'll be walking along and someone with a bike could come up behind you and
It'll be
say,
12
"On
foot
your right."
wide.
Sorry?
It'll be 12 feet wide,
Okay,
so that yes, you can accommodate bikes and people comfortably enough, given the traffic or the, you know, relative volume
yeah,
there.
okay.
All right.
That also comes back to what Scott said at the very
Yeah.
beginning is, publishing bike etiquette.
Absolutely,
Oh,
Practicing bike
Absolutely.
etiquette, teaching people how to
yeah.
perform bike etiquette.
you mean along that new area? Yeah, no, that's a
And
great
that might be
suggestion.
something-
Absolutely,
Yeah, that is
we have to
really good.
socialize people,
Mhm.
absolutely. But I think part of that socialization has to be, we also are giving you a safe space that doesn't include the sidewalk.
You know,
on which to bike.
I remember growing up, we used to have these bike rodeos here, you'd go down, you'd bring your bike down, they'd have a course all out for you, and they would teach you, you know, your hand signals and all that stuff, and what you should
Great.
watch out for, you know, maybe we volunteer, and we can bring that back, so.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All right, last round, cause we gotta move on.
Yeah, I promised my husband I'd be here for an hour, and I'm already overdue, so I will be very fast. But this is urgent, so I stuck around, because, I have a request from Helen Reese, who's one of my constituents, but also, as you know, a very involved member of the Swart Wilcox, House Preservation Group. She may even be the president, honestly, I'm not sure. So, they are intending to apply for a grant, to put toward their historic space, and for the grant, I'll just keep it short, for the grant, they need from the city a couple of things, because the property is technically owned by the city, it's a city park. So, they would need, most specifically, and is required, a letter of consent from the property owner. So, we would need to provide a letter of consent for them to apply for this grant. If there are questions about what the grant could be used for, we all know they have the barn project going on, so that's the intention. If there was some desire for the Cowan to come speak about this, or someone from Swart Wilcox to come speak about how they would use the money, then I could try to set that up. The only thing is that, the deadline for the grant is March 3rd. They've only just been made aware of it like a couple of days ago, so, that's why I wanted to come here and talk to you all about, council willingness to provide a letter of consent for them to apply for the grant to use toward their barn raising. So that's kind of that. The other thing is, that's the critical thing. The other thing is letters of endorsement, which can be short. But if individual council members are interested in writing, or staff, were interested in writing a short letter of endorsement for this Swart Wilcox, that would be great as well. They are only eligible to receive this because of their recently acquired 501c3 status. So I think that's a really great step forward for them to be able to go out for grants like this, and I want to make sure that we
for a grant on behalf of the city, right?
Right, in the last council meeting, you remember we approved the letter of support for the core grant, which would be planting trees on city property. Typically, that's something we bring through council. We don't have another council meeting before the 3rd. There could be a special council meeting. I'm just looking now to see, we've talked about this barn project at council before. I feel like there's something out there that might cover us as far as us supporting that. But I'll have to research that, otherwise a special
Not sure
council
how they
meeting
would-
may
Yeah.
be needed.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, I see what you're saying, in terms of
Yeah.
it being like,
We need
tested,
more.
process,
Four right now.
approval.
No, we
Yeah.
can't do the vote. I was just thinking like,
There's Mike here too.
yeah, but you can't do a vote because it's not a published.
Right,
Wow.
No, I was just saying like if we could get,
Yeah.
I wasn't
I
thinking.
would love to say yes, but no.
And I know a lot of these grants, they don't often get a lot of lead time,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I
and
was
there's
just-
often a lot of requirements.
All I was thinking was, I
So-
mean, like, there's 5 of us here, if we can kinda
Yeah.
get the nod for the next council meeting that we're gonna say yes
Oh,
to it, you know, but I know we have to,
But it's March 3rd.
March 3rd, and
yeah,
what's
and that's the
5th or
day
whatever?
before
Is it?
our next
Oh.
Yeah.
meeting.
They're really gonna have to
Course.
hustle.
Yeah. Yeah, she's stressed about it. I was like,
Because,
And that's
like, if
great
we
that
can
they have a
even-
grant writer too, I just wanna know,
Oh,
because I know
good.
grant writers are hard to come by, so that's fantastic for them.
So I was just like,
Um,
maybe it would, you know, work in their favor that we plan on voting yes for it at the next meeting, we just.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the city council's already approved
Yeah.
$4,000 for design of this barn on our property, the
Okay.
council
So I
already
think
has
we already
committed
got
to the
Yeah.
project. I
Okay.
was looking, there might be another
We've already
motion back.
consented.
So maybe
Sounds
there'll
So
be
that I think
resolution,
a
it's just-
letter of support from the mayor
Okay.
Okay,
would
fantastic.
probably
Yeah.
not require another,
I don't think it would
another
require a
motion.
vote, but we could always do it if they really wanted it.
Yeah.
But it'd have to be, it'd be after the fact unless you did a special meeting.
Yeah, which we've done, right? We did that for something
Yeah.
where we came in and the
Last
5 of
year.
us were there and we just
What's
read the
the-
motion and did it because we had already talked about it.
Carrie, what's
It's for the
the,
film and stuff.
what's the notification for a special meeting?
The-
It depends on if it's an emergency versus a general meeting, but back on July 5th, 2023, the common council offered their support of the overall project.
I'll never
That's
get
what I was
it.
looking for.
So,
So I don't think you need to do another
Okay.
motion.
Okay, fantastic.
Yay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great though. Any kind of grant endeavor is,
Yeah.
I know, an endeavor,
Yeah.
so kudos to them.
Thank you. Yeah,
I know
I'll
it's
share
huge.
that. I will. And like I said, if you have a few minutes to just write up a quick thing and if you wanna send it to me, I'll send it to Helen and they'll get it in the grant, that would be
Okay.
great.
Okay, so just send you something, we don't need any particular?
No, and it doesn't need to be especially formal, they can just,
Okay.
include comments from the council, that would be great, thank you. And thank you, Greg, for
Alright.
looking into that and Carrie to make sure that we can do that. Awesome. Okay.
We'll move to our very last topic now.
Bye.
Thank you. Get to the last.
See, we
one.
were stalling, you guys were here
Yeah,
early,
thank you.
so.
Bye.
We're gonna go to the Oneana Creek Trails presentation. We threw this on at the last minute, my apologies. I kinda forgot that we were going to do this, and so, sorry about something, I forgot.
That's all right. I have these giant maps from Chris that you can look at. Those also put a map up on the screen. I don't know what. You guys worked some version of these maps before.
okay, so like,
Legal me through.
So jealous.
You could do an ordinance. Oh, big maps, yeah, I'm getting this out of the way for big maps. It's like here.
Do you have these on PowerPoint at all, or is it just
Yes, but see,
hard
well,
copy?
actually, no.
That one?
Just this one?
I wasn't planning that there was an actual
Here, you wanna-
information, I thought it was.
Could you come to my
We'll do that sometime.
This is all my
Absolutely.
fault, this isn't anything on you
Yes.
guys, I forgot all about this, and they reminded me about
Plan
9 o'clock this morning. By the time I got back to them, it was like 11 o'clock.
Oh,
I think is how the emails went, so.
It's fine. I mean, we've been thinking about this and we want you to think about it because we want to figure out what the next steps are. So, I'll just. Just want to get it. All right, well, I'll just start yammering at you guys while we're figuring that out. So, I mean, I think you guys probably all know this, but I'll just, in case you don't, that, the city staff have been supportive of
looking at ways to open up the city land that's in the, the Oneonta Creek corridor from between Lower Reservoir and Wilbur Lake, basically. It's a total of 1,900 acres, and the staff proposed opening about 3/4 of it to public use. But the city staff didn't have a very clear idea of what was actually there. So Bill and I and a few other volunteers went, spent a lot of time scouting and discovering that there's actually a huge number of trails existing already in that area. And once we get the map up, Bill will show you some of those.
You said there's trails
But
already?
there's a lot of trails already, sort of piecemeal trails.
Right.
And the land has been used sort of it's been quasi-open for a long time. People go to Wilbur Lake, people,
Yeah.
So like for hiking and dog walking and, most recently hunting. So our vision is basically a 5-mile long linear trail that would follow Oneonta Creek basically from Wilbur Park at Center Street all the way up, past the high school, past the Lower Reservoir, past Wilbur Lake, and all the way up to the town line. And then with, we kind of can imagine it as like a wider graded, like multi-use trail, it'd be good for like biking, dog walking, that kind of stuff, cross-country skiing, I guess. And then all the side properties, as it bulges out in different directions, where there'd be loop trails and connector trails that, are more rugged and would be good for hiking, snowshoeing, the kind of stuff that people do like above Wilbur Park now, those kind of trails. And I guess I'm excited about it because I think if it's designed well and publicized well, it could be a tourist attraction for Oneonta.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the vision, and the lighter area there, you can see that's 1,900 acres of city land, and that doesn't count the like 400 or so acres of Wilbur Park area. That's just like north of the high school. So there are 2 impediments to this vision, 2 kinds of impediments, I'd say. Like one is like physical issues such as, wet areas, competing uses for the land, and some parcels of private land that are intermixed with the city land. And then the other kind of set of issues are the logistical kind, figuring out how these trails will be designed and constructed. City staff don't have capacity to build these trails, so we need to sort of put together volunteers to do it. And so, anyway, that's kind of an overview, and Bill can take you through sort of step by step in of what's there and what could be there.
And excuse me, I just have a quick question for Mike. Is the hunting an impediment as well now?
Well, that's an example of the competing uses, yes.
Oh, okay.
Where, maybe you'd have to, if once there were publicly open and posted trails, you'd have to have a period of time, like, these trails closed from November 1st to December 31st or something like that.
Yeah.
People aren't hiking as much that time of year anyway.
Right.
So you find a way to, when multiple people want to, another competing use is like logging, because we've been logging those versus trails, and water quality versus logging, and mountain biking versus, like we heard from the woman here, people roaring down hills on their bikes versus people walking their dogs. We'll have to figure out policies. It's nothing that's not doable, it's just, it'll take some doing. But anyway, Bill, you wanna show them what?
Yeah, so this is just an overall JPEG of the city, and city property shaded. I'll zoom in quick. I have this all on a map that I'm gonna switch to in a minute. This is essentially These are trails in Wilbur Park, on over to, this is county property here, and Glenwood Creek and Glenwood Cemetery property here. High school here, so if I zoom out, we're going up the Lower Reservoir, here's College Camp. And again, this is all city property. Oh my God. Okay. All the way up to the,
To the black
We
zone.
I don't know why it's doing
You
that,
got
all the way
that.
up to the
Yes.
airport. Okay, so
Up east.
here's the airport, and essentially follows the East Street corridor.
I don't think it likes you.
I don't know what's going on there. So here is just an interactive map. I'm gonna make it larger. Okay, so with this map, we can see all the landowners. Once I zoom in here, we'll start here at the high school, which is obviously school district property. These are, again, all the trails that are up in Wilbur Park. Here's Wilbur Park. So
So
generally speaking, the
Bill,
trails.
let me just interject and say the blue and green trails are existing trails, the yellow are proposed
Yeah, so
trails.
these yellow lines here, all the way up, are trails that generally speaking don't exist. They're proposed in the watershed property. And like here's green trails, blue trails, they're all pre-existing trail networks.
Do we have any of these marked, like with knee or whatever, like blue trail or whatever? Do we have any, like a kiosk or anything right now, so people know like what these
Yeah,
trails
like there's
are?
a trail kiosk in Wilbur Park,
Okay.
that shows all those, the Wilbur Park area trails. And the ones that are like Hardwick area, Hardwick has, or you know,
Right.
Hardwick has those trails marked.
I guess I shouldn't have asked the question because Bill just lost his map. I'm sorry, Bill.
Is the map in Wilbur Park current?
Not the most current, no. The map that I sent you, I think those files, you should be able to create a new map
Okay.
for those trails in Wilbur Park.
Okay.
But anyway, so the yellow trails, the yellow lines are proposed trails. There's a lot of stakeholders involved, obviously, city being one of them, school district being one of them, private landowners being another, and I'll get into other stakeholders in a minute. So we have a couple different options here. Probably the most preferred and direct option would be this route here, which follows the creek. However, there's some difficulties with that, and again, depending on school district input as well. So follows this. It does cross. There is not enough room along the track here. Otherwise, we could stay on the east side of the creek. But since there is not enough room, we have to cross the creek at some point. So that's the difficulty with this option. The other, and again, we haven't talked to the school district yet, but how do they want traffic during school hours, right? Otherwise, they don't want people maybe going up the driveway in front of the school.
Right, so,
During school hours. Maybe, I'm speculating.
I mean, people do, but if we have like the official city trail, you don't want it going right off the S curve and like,
Right.
so you sort of go around the edges of the school property.
Yeah, that's kind of their policy with some of the other trails that go along city, school district property. So then the other two options basically come off of the existing trail networks, however, it gets away from the creek, a little bit. So this is all school district property, even though this isn't technically shaded here, it is school district property. For some reason, it's called Oneonta Consolidated, I don't know why. So here's two options, and the first stakeholder here is, this is technically an existing trail that a lot of students use now, currently, while they're walking to school or whatnot. However, it does cross private land. So there's one stakeholder there.
Yeah, and there are a few places like this where the city staff have to do some research to see, was there an easement granted to the school district sometime in the distant past? Or have just kids been crossing this yard for generations, right?
Without legal
Right, so,
standing.
so,
And that kind of leads into another discussion point is, there has to be some dialogue and some creation of, you know, whether it's right-of-way dialogue, easement dialogue, liability dialogue, and with all the stakeholders involved, this is gonna come to fruition. So that takes us to Meadowbrook Lane. Along here, so let me zoom out again. You have two options north of Meadowbrook Lane. One option is essentially coming straight out to East Street and heading up to Lower Reservoir along East Street. That would probably require some type of boardwalk or sidewalk. Again, that's in the town line is somewhere in here, I believe, roughly. So that would require dialogue with the town to create whether a boardwalk or sidewalk along East Street. The town being another stakeholder, obviously. And again, these are all things that kind of fall into the LWRP, Local Watershed Revitalization Plan. So that might be something that is identified or could be identified if that's the option we want to go with. So the second option basically goes through private land. However, there is an easement, or we don't know if there's an easement for the water lines.
So we have two water lines, raw water lines that come from the reservoirs and then come down to the city. We have to do some research to see what kind of easement language we have. We must have something, because they've been there for a very long time, well over years, right? So we're pretty certain that there's some kind of easement there, whether it's a 10-foot wide easement or a 20-foot wide easement, we're not sure, but we need to investigate that more.
So, I mean, this section from the high school, from Meadowbrook to Lower Reservoir, that's the big section that is not owned by the city. But if we can get public access on this water main easement, then we have a connection through there. Should we, you wanna go up into
Yep.
Lower Reservoir?
And there are things that can be written into easements, for tax incentives and so on and so forth also, just as a side note. So here's Lower Reservoir. This is an existing trail that ends roughly right about here, and you have two options basically going east and west of the reservoir. Generally speaking, this is a non-existent trail, however, there might be some,
It's just an old logging road.
there's an old logging road in there. This is an existing trail on the west side that starts at the upper portion and comes down to
It's a service road, yeah.
this service road, to this area. So this option would need this area in between, to be built. Anything else you wanna say about that?
No, it's just, I mean, we know a lot about this, so we're not gonna bore you guys by going into all the details, but we're like, if you have questions, just let us know, but we've walked all of this at some point and scouted it, so, I mean,
This
so
is
then,
all city property.
Yes.
On this portion of it.
so then the next section is city land, but there are like different city agencies that manage different pieces of these property. So the police department
That's up here.
has this
Yeah,
property
right here.
here, where they use it for a shooting range, so somebody needs to talk to the police department, and see, are they okay with a trail that's basically across the creek from their shooting range, sort of along the roadside? Or do we need to like cross the road there and go up the other side? And that clearing on the left side there is where we talked about in our last meeting for the reforestation project.
Both of these, right?
Yeah, both of
Both
those.
sections.
So,
So here's your two options, on each side of East Street. This is the shooting range, so, obviously the police department's the stakeholder as far as where that goes. This is the pipeline that runs this, that's what this line is here. And so once we get to the pipeline, we can come out. There is, again, this is a vague trail, existing trail already, logging road. There's some stuff going on in there, but largely non-existent.
So, and then I just want to say in this next section, I mean, look at this. This next section is amazing. There is a whole network of trail loops that exist that no one we've talked to knows actually who has created them. They're on city land. They're beautiful. There's a bridge across the creek. There's like someone's been mowing trails for
Benches. It's beautiful.
like, and so one of the questions to think about is, I mean, some of these the trails that are there are pretty rough. They're like old logging roads. They need a lot of work. There are others where you put up a sign, you can put up a parking sign and a park sign there and say it's open for business, like today,
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yep, so that's these existing trails here. These are on both sides of the creek. And obviously that would come out here, going south would end here. Just a side note, here's College Camp. These are existing trails that unofficially go to College Camp.
right. So this is another issue of another stakeholder. College Camp, Suco doesn't want members of the public using their trails, but they're adjacent to city land. So do we see if they change their mind over time? Do we sort of have our trails that don't officially connect to their trails, and if
Have you spoken to them lately about that?
there have been a series of conversations. It's a like most cases, it's a liability issue, and so like
Somebody has to have that.
so yeah, there are definitely stakeholders. There are people who work for Suco who are very strongly advocating for merging these trail systems together, and then there are people who are, concerned about
Do not want that.
concerned about what could go wrong. Anyway, moving on.
So, moving on. So, existing trails both sides of of the creek, and up to this point. So I'll start with this section here on the east side of the creek. This is an area that was recently forested or logged, I should say. And the issue here is there used to be a trail, but because of so much debris that was left over, it's impassable at this point until somebody gets in there to do some work to clear out some of the debris that was left after logging. This section here it may be a little wet right in here, I'm not sure. I did walk it, but I could only get this far because of very thick brush. But either way, either one of these is very doable, and both connect to existing trails to the south.
Bill, if I might add, DPW is willing to clean that trail up where it was logged. If the guy could just mark that for us, and I can go in there and clean that trail up for you guys. That's not a problem.
So we just bought you that new machine that you used, has that chipper on it or whatever.
Spotter recorder chainsaws.
So that brings us to Lower Cross Road. From Lower Cross Road, there are existing trails that go all the way up and around Wilbur Lane. These are some proposed branches, obviously, here, but generally speaking, these trails, these existing trails. Oh, and a side note, there is about a 20 head or 24 head cemetery right here. Ooh, right here. Yeah,
In the middle of the.
in the middle of the city property.
Do you have any like history on that? Like where it came
It's Wilbur and Pete, generally, or the family names generally. P-E-E-T. So this is, city land west of Wilbur Lake. This is gonna be logged very soon, I believe. Existing trails, this Oneonta Water Company is obviously city land also. For some reason it's not shaded, I can't tell you why. We have a little proposed section here. This is state property, state of New York. And we'd like to see a proposed trail here that would join West Street. Bikers and hikers like loops, so that kind of gives you that loop. Then we're north of Wilbur Lake, so again, oh, I never put these trails up. Oh, that's fine, I'm sorry. So around the peninsula, this is an existing logging road that brings you here. I could switch to a different screen quickly.
It's all right. There are 4 nice trails through there that were presumably built by the adjacent landowner just north of there.
Beautiful trails
Like, yeah.
that come down to basically this point here.
And then, you know, you just keep going, you know.
Yeah. Now we're at the airport here, and proposing a trail all the way up to this property here. Nice little lake, pond.
So that's the overview. I mean, there's amazing potential here, and it just basically needs to be organized and pulled together. So that's some of the questions I have for you guys, because you've been doing this longer than I have. Like, what's the best process to move this forward? There's some potential funds through the LWRP, Waterfront Revitalization project, although there's also the opportunity to just, you know, to choose a first section and say, I mean, probably one of the trails around Wilbur Lake would make sense, because some people already use that, and put up a trail map, put up signs, get the word out. These trails are open for business, you know. Then you need to build a constituency. You need to find volunteers who are willing to help build trails. So we've gotten this far, and I don't know how to take the next steps.
Well, I wonder about like the role of the DEC here. Would that be appropriate to kind of get the state involved at all?
Not state land.
State really only manages their trails and their state lands. They're not typically associated with private trails. The city's private entity. I don't believe that they manage our trails. We can ask, but I think it'd be a stretch.
I'm just thinking because then you could tap into, there'd be so many resources that would be available through that you could tap into that could then maybe answer some of Mike's questions. But if they're not available, then you'd have to maybe go a nonprofit route.
Right. Yeah, as far as the DC goes, you could make a case for some sections of it anyway, for the trails that cross state lands.
Right.
Though that, like, Homer Folks is really the main area there.
I'm seeing this, most of this is what I wanted to hear. Have you guys asked Judy if she knows if there's any grants or anything like that to help? I know sometimes she's able to find us grants to help with some of these projects, how we got some of them done. If that's all right with the city administrator, I don't want to say reach out, but.
Yeah, no, I think, LWRP, which it wouldn't be an immediate thing, that plan is still in development, but that plan, like I said, identifies these trails as part of the plan. I think it would be probably the best source. There might be some other sources out there, trails, but typically there's not a whole lot out there for recreational trails.
I mean, that's something maybe, I mean, Chris has already said he's willing to help where he can, when he can. I mean, this is, you're looking at a few-year project, I mean, so.
Yeah.
And in that time, you have to reach out to the other stakeholders, like the school district, to see what, you know, how they feel and stuff like that.
What was the process by which the Susquehanna Trail group came together? Was that a group of volunteers who organized and then decided
Before
to?
my time, but I believe so. Does anyone else have more history?
Yeah,
on
as
that?
far as I know, it was, John New, who was a Suco professor, and, started using the New Island, what's it called now, the vacant city land by the dam.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he developed it or if he started the Susquehanna group, I think like 20 years ago, I think. And it's been very incremental building that trail. I mean, it's coming together, but hopefully this can come together in less than 20 years, but.
Right.
Maybe you could start the Oneonta Trail Association or something.
Yeah, I just
like that.
wondered.
There already is.
Is there?
Board member.
Oh.
So, one point I would like to make is this is more than just quality of life. People travel for recreating on trails. Like it's an economic generator. And especially when you have something like that, and speaking of the Greenway, something like what we're trying to develop in the Greenway, on New Island all the way out to Fort Park, so on and so forth. Basically that whole LWRP project. And if there can be trails developed like that, and even professional developed trails, people travel a long way, and it's proven over and over again that it's highly economical. It's very good for the local economies.
I know several people that travel all over the place to walk.
Yeah.
So, another question is, do we need to figure out a city department that oversees this? Because now these different pieces of property, there's Wilbur Park, it's the park department, there's the water utility, there's the police department, there's the airport. So I don't know what would be the logical group, and I don't know if any office has the capacity to do it, but it seems like having somebody or some group of people who are have the primary responsibility, even if most of the work is volunteer, at least to have somebody has the vision or is pushing this forward, because otherwise it's just, a volunteer workday here, a volunteer workday there.
The management of the city properties in that area, minus the airport, fall under DPW. So even though it's the shooting range for the police department, and we maintain it, we brush hog the open fields there for them to use it.
Yeah, I mean, recreation is under DPW. Obviously, the city a decade or so ago kind of went away from managing our own recreation programs and that sort of thing. We've never really developed our own trails, and this would be, if the city undertakes this as a lead, it's a new service we don't really provide now. So we have to talk about, to your point, who does that? We don't really have somebody that's you can easily point to and say, oh, that person would make sense because we just haven't done this sort of thing before. But yeah, as Chris said, I think those properties are all sort of under public works.
I will say that, just to bring up your point about economic development, that the mayor has this task force on sustainability and economic development, that I think this is a really important dimension here. The first conversation that was convened didn't really talk about tourism in terms of the natural environment, and I think it's actually quite important to bring that element or dimension to the conversation. So maybe reaching out to the mayors, this task force could be a good location for including
That makes sense.
this site and potential planning
Right.
as part of the broader conversation around economic development to Oneonta.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the immediate next step, some of the immediate next steps are that somebody needs to talk to all these, you know, the government landowners first, you know, this, you know, SUCO, the state of New York, like the county, you know, and whether it's better to talk to them one-on-one or pull people together for a meeting. I don't imagine a lot of resistance to this idea, but I do imagine different groups will have, you know, concerns that will have to be addressed.
Here's the question, who are you looking at doing all this? Is this gonna be only on a trailway or whatever association, is this?
Yeah, I think that's a
private?
good question.
That's the first question you
Yeah.
gotta see, because the
That's why I was
city,
wondering about the DEC.
we're not gonna have the resources to do
Right.
this,
Right,
to
right.
take this and keep track of it.
Right, Greg and Chris made it clear that there's not staff capacity to
Right.
So,
do more than like occasionally, you know, help out, you know, a large tree falls that volunteers can't cut, you know, send someone out with a chainsaw, like that kind of here and there, but it's gonna have to be a volunteer effort.
yeah, you're gonna have to have like the Susquehanna Green Trails and stuff
Yeah,
like that, you're gonna
that's
people
what I was
to take
thinking.
care of.
But you
Just-
kind of replicate that model.
Right.
I don't, and I don't see anywhere in the distant future that we're gonna be able to afford to even bring on a mass hire to take on.
Although sustainability, this goes along with sustainability
It
and
does.
tourism, and I think
Yeah.
that it behooves the city to think long-term like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to think like getting it going and stuff like
Yeah.
that, that we don't have.
Yes,
Go in and out, well,
right.
Regarding state trails, I do know in the Casco watershed,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you
that-
can adopt a trail,
Right.
and like, my old boss, he was a heavy hiker, and he adopted a trail to like, he maintained it, he'd go
Right.
down like once a month, he'd walk it, he'd trim whatever leaves need to be trimmed back, and if there's
Right.
like a large tree, then they would notify DEC, and the DEC would, you know, if their staff would
Yeah.
cut it with a chainsaw. I don't know if there's something that we can do, a voluntary system like that, where someone adopts a section trail, and then they're responsible for that section trail.
really good one that's.
Then they contact my department if there's like something big they can't handle.
Right.
If you like the hiking.
Yeah, it seems like with LWRP and creating sort of a network of trails connecting these things, it would make sense if there was one organization that took on the responsibility of coordinating
So
how
what
they
is,
all come together.
what is happening with the LWRP?
I would have to defer to Judy and Steven on that. I know that our consultant for a while was not around, but I think they're getting back to, they can have some meetings again, so it can move forward. I know they had a meeting with them last week, so time frame, I don't know exactly.
So, relevant.
Just, I mentioned the Susquehanna Greenway, and this is just a side note, but it is the LWRP, and it's big with, plays into the economic development also. So here's New Island. These are all the existing trails. This is a track I have here. So we're hashing out ideas on how to get to Fortin Park, which is this area here. And it, again, it falls into the LWRP, but, so we have some other proposed trails that go somewhere, generally speaking, along here, and eventually bring us to, Fortin Park. Now, from here, there's also, I'm gonna go ahead and this So here is one proposed, that terminates at the Charlotte Creek fishing access. So if you can imagine, here's some different proposed routes getting us to Fortin Park. Basically taking from Catella Park, trails that take you all the way at this fishing access, to this fishing access. Now, big picture here, and again, this is a huge economic area that a lot of places have taken advantage of. But what this line is right here, if I can zoom in, there, is the Ulster Delaware Railroad, okay? Which is the railroad that is on New Island currently, okay? That's the rail bed. Delaware County owns, so if you follow this rail line, it takes you to, this is East Meredith, obviously, Davenport Center. This bend here is Hanford Mills, onto their property at Hanford Mills. From there, and Delaware County owns a lot of this easement. It takes you to Courtright Station and terminates, some of this is New York City property, terminates in Bloomville here, but it connects to the Catskill Scenic Trail. Okay?
Yes.
Right? Catskill Scenic Trail goes from Bloomville to Roxbury. Roxbury, you can go from Roxbury to Kingston, all on the same railroad.
Right,
Sure.
and then going the other way, there's the railroad line up to Cooperstown and a lot of DEC land along the Susquehanna, where you could basically create, instead of an Oneonta-Susquehanna Greenway, create an Otsego County Susquehanna Greenway.
Right.
I mean, so
This red line is that rail bed. And it's 20 miles from here to here, which might sound like a lot to you, but somebody that's biking and hiking these trails, that's like a destination, right? That's making, and Oneonta is the end of it, right? So if you can imagine someday taking a bike or hiking from Kingston to Oneonta, that is a destination, right?
So that, I mean, that's long-term, obviously, but it's, I mean, so it just happens, there's a countywide meeting later this week for different trail organizations across the county that we're gonna go to and see what other groups are thinking about.
So Bill, what about the other way going out Delaware County to where, was it, not Mine Kill, the one that goes over the hill from, you know where Pine Lake is, right? From
Yep,
Highway,
so that's
across the
around-
way,
Yeah.
cause that goes out towards Milford.
Mud Lake.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, so here's Riddell State Park, right?
that's it, Riddell State Park.
This is the trail that goes up to Mud Lake and then down to Pine Lake, which is Hartwick College's environmental campus. That railroad would connect essentially Catella Park to Pine Lake, which is right here.
Cause I know there's trails out on
And-
Pine Lake that,
Yeah, that railroad bed crosses the creek essentially right at Pine Lake. You can walk down to that old trestle. The trestle's not passable at this point, but yeah. So from in the short view, you know, not Roxbury, but the short view is the town park, then Pine Lake, then Hanford Mills, after Hanford Mills, and even Davenport Center, right? Like, you get bikers that are coming into Davenport Center, they're gonna stop and buy food and drinks and so on and so forth. This is Hanford Mills right here, so they own this portion of the rail bed right through their property. I'm sure they would love to have people stopping there and getting cheese and who knows what else, and so on and so forth. But yeah, big picture, I can bore you to death, go on and on.
so actually, just thinking about it, when you talk about stakeholders, you should get both colleges involved and pitch the idea on how this could be good for recruitment for both of them.
Yeah.
With students, cause a lot of students like to hike, and how we could try, cause Hardwick Trails will tie into this, ones by Job Corps, which will tie into
Yeah.
one by SUNY, which will tie into the ones by the reservoir.
So here's what you're talking about right here. So this is, these are all the trails at Hartwick College that go essentially through Strawberry Fields, on up to Homer Folks. These are all the trails, behind Homer Folks here. And they actually generally speaking, go on up to Glen Hill. You can cross and come down. This is Suco and College Camp, right? So then that takes us all to the East Street corridor that we were talking about earlier.
You said 20 miles from Roxbury all the way over to Oneonta?
No, 20 miles from Oneonta to Bloomville, which is the
Bloomville.
start of the Catskill Scenic Trail, which is the same rail bed that they've already developed into a rail trail.
So yeah, I guess first is you probably have to figure out a group that's gonna wanna lead all this. I can give you names of people that probably be interested in right off
Yeah.
the bat.
I've actually talked to Delaware County, somebody, I believe, in the planning department, and I made them aware that they owned currently, it's a significant portion of that easement. I think it's more than 5 miles of linear, rail bed. And I don't even think they knew they owned it. And they were very interested in, like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. It's very similar to the East Street corridor. It's like getting all of those stakeholders organized and talking and hashing things out is the difficult part.
Because I think the other thing you have to do when it comes to the private landowners is show them that this has been done in other places and they have great success with it. And, the people that hike these trails are very professional. They don't leave
Yeah.
litter around. They don't hurt the environment. They're there for a purpose. And,
I like to bring up the point when it comes to landowners, like I said earlier, it's a discussion about liability and easements and right-of-ways and tax incentives for those easements. But what is commonly done in this area are snowmobile trails, right? Granted, they're only used in the winter, but snowmobile associations have those easements and right-of-ways through private property. So that's one point that is done locally, but nationally, this is a very common thing. It's just hashing out the talking points of liability and how all that looks.
So, thank you guys. In the short term, is this something we need to talk about in council, or just a much shorter abbreviated version of what we're talking about, or is it something that if we should choose a trail section and have a public grand opening, ribbon cutting, whatever, and like?
I think short term, depending what group we're gonna have together, is I think you need to work with our city administrator and Chris and try to figure out what portion you wanna start first. Hash out the big plan of what they can do and stuff, and then once you guys kinda come up to an agreement, I would come to the council with a big plan and everything and do a presentation on, and how this is gonna be good for the economy and, and who the group is and stuff like that. I mean, because like right now, it's kind of hard to come to the council with no group or anything and say,
Right.
this is what we want to do. We're gonna be like, hey, this is great. Come back when you got, what I mean?
Right.
But if you can come with some of that stuff, and then we can sit there as a council and be like, okay, well, this is what we can get behind. We're gonna, we think we can allocate some of Chris's resources once in a while to help with the trails, do this, do that. This is what we're willing to do, and maybe we can, at that point, when the council takes on, yes, we're getting behind this, we can get to the town and get them behind it, and then we can get to the school district, get them behind it, and then we can maybe get the Hardwick and Suco, get them behind it, and, then you can get to the counties and stuff like that, and that's the driving force is once you start building that excitement and you get the people behind it, then you're gonna have people that wanna help with this, because, there's a lot of people that wanna make these trails and see these trails, get bigger, because I know on the Hardwick side, I know that one of the active ones there has talked about trying to figure out how to get our trails in with other, so I think that's your first
Right.
couple steps is to find out how you're gonna do this as what the organization's gonna be, see what, working with the city administrator, Chris, what resources they can allocate, about how much, cause I'm not gonna speak for them, cause I don't know what they can
Yeah.
allocate. And then, how we can go from there, on a
Yeah.
bigger plan.
Yeah, and I think, if you reference when you're talking with the city council, like you said, the economic development aspect of it, how does your proposal or your vision tie into the strategic plan? It's not just sustainability,
Right.
it's economics. Make the pitch to make it a council priority, and then the council can determine what resources they wanna dedicate to it, if we need to have a different employee, or, how we wanna do that. One partner you might wanna talk with, if you haven't already, is FOF. I know that they're interested in developing trails.
Right.
They've talked about with the Susquehanna Greenway Committee.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. I think the players are there. It's just
Yeah.
trying to get them on to expand. Maybe bring it underneath all one umbrella so
Right.
people know. But I think, kind of got me excited about it. I don't
Yeah.
really hike, so.
Yeah, no, I'm like ready for winter to be over, so this was exciting to hear, because I can't wait to get back out. But, and also like really learning about that economic impact of it too, I went into this like, recreation, a connection with nature, but understanding that economic impact as well is very, helpful to.
are you aware of any studies that have been done on these rail trail projects where they document or kind of try to demonstrate the economic
Yeah,
impact?
I'd
It's
have to
something
look back and
might help
remember.
you sell the idea. I think,
Yeah.
to
The
not
ones
just the
I've,
council.
the ones I've known are more urbanized area trails, so we should find some that are more comparable to Osceola Delaware County. But yes, definitely,
There's a lot of, research documentation on that.
There's two big ones, the one you mentioned. The one you mentioned, I actually did a wastewater water project, ran 8 miles of water and sewer main down from Grand Gorge to Roxbury about 20 years ago.
On that
Yeah.
trail.
On that
Yeah.
trail, and then we had to pile the ties up, because it was still, the railroad was somehow still involved.
It still is.
And we had to pile the rail, all the
It's
rail, all
owned
the rail
by
and the
the-
ties, and they took it all away after we were done. And then we were done putting the water sewer, and then we had to regrade it to their specifications.
Yeah.
But it's a really, that section's a really nice trail.
Yeah, I've been out on that one.
And then the other one is from Arkville to Phoenicia, that's a rail
Yes.
trail,
Yes.
and that's another nice section of trail.
Yeah, nice.
It's an interesting point so the Catskill Scenic Trail is owned by I can't remember the name of the, organization, but it's essentially the Roxbury Railroad. They still own that whole easement, but they kind of have it separated where you have the Roxbury Railroad that is actively, an active railroad, that runs from Roxbury to, Arkville, thank you. And then the other section from Roxbury to Bloomville that they own is a recreation trail. And they are actually, I've spoken to the president, and he's very interested in the concept and extremely excited about it, and would be willing to have both pedestrian and bicyclists along the section of the active railroad. If those, I would love to hop on the railroad and take that for a break, but anyway, that's a side note. However, he's tapped out as far as what
He can do
they
it.
can handle.
Yeah.
So there's that whole side of it.
Is there any more questions?
Do you think, does it seem realistic to, maybe as the winter's ending, spring is starting, that, Earth Day, that kind of time to have a trail opening? Like I said, some of the trails around Wilbur Park,
Are they ready to be
they're
open?
ready to go, they need signs, someone needs to figure out
All
parking.
All the trails on the maps are there, other than the ones that are highlighted in yellow, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what kind of, is that a resource grade that we could maybe donate some signage? Since we got the
Yeah,
sign.
I think we just gotta figure out what the quantity is, sizes, how much is that really gonna cost? If we have materials, could be something we look at. I think another thing we
Well, I
might
guess we
wanna,
can't donate, but you know what I mean.
It's the city's.
Yeah, it's this, yeah, we'd be,
It's just promoting
Yeah.
trails on city land.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
have you discussed with the town of Oneana at all, anyone at the town of Oneana, the concept?
Not anyone who's currently on the, well, actually, no, that's not true. Patricia Riddell,
Oh, yeah.
Riddell, Kent.
Riddell Kent, I think,
Yeah.
yep.
So I know the OSG has, contacted some officials in the town for the section of New Island that goes into Fort Park. We haven't really talked about anybody in the town on the, East Street corridor because it's basically all city land except for that essentially long East Street, where you would need like a boardwalk, or there should be a sidewalk there anyway, in my opinion, but, it's all city land there, so I don't know what their involvement would be.
the only other question I got is, do you know where you're doing starting points and stuff, like where future kiosks would be? You'd have to think
Trailheads.
about those,
Yeah.
like where you're gonna.
So,
Yeah.
here, let's start down here, obviously you got Meadowbrook Lane, which is not, well, let's even start at Wilbur Park, there's already a kiosk and trails there, we know. Meadowbrook Lane would be an area, but then, well, even at Lower Reservoir at the dam there, there is maybe some parking and possibility for kiosks. But, here along the north part of Reservoir, Lower Reservoir, there's parking areas currently. That would be a great place for a kiosk. You can even see in this picture, right here, there's a big tractor trailer or something rather there. Moving on up there, and let me know if I skip something there. My phone. Here, there's a small parking area right here.
4 or 5 cars.
4 or 5 cars, yep. So that'd be a great place for a kiosk and, with information.
So those areas we would just wanna see, you know, are those within the town right of way or are they on city property? I'm not sure, you know, where the property line is. I do recall when the city and the town split the cost of a initial wetland delineation and then sort of a preliminary study of the trail, like that connector on the Lower Reservoir section. That was, it was like 2018, 2019, 2020, around there. There was some public concern from town residents about, well, how are you advertising these? Are you gonna create parking areas? We don't want that. So there, you know, there could be some pushback from the local
Yeah.
residents there, as you expect.
Right.
So that's why I asked, have you discussed with the town? It might make sense to try to bring them on board with the general idea as well.
So when you talk, I just think like when you're talking to school district, one of the things you might be able to push is, like if we did some history along the trail, you know, like the history of the reservoir and stuff like that, maybe you can make it so like they can do field trips and stuff up through there, so it's an educational
Oh,
thing
yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know, how did this, you know, stuff like that, science, like, you know, they can
The
go up.
Greenway
The
is really good
Greenway,
at doing that.
yeah, they have a really nice laid out,
Yeah.
you know,
With
nature
both
trail.
history and
Yep.
nature,
Yeah.
aspects.
Just trying to help you get it through the municipal, you know, other
Yeah.
municipalities there.
But that's a good point, I didn't think about that, Greg.
And the only other thing is with the with the airport property, I don't know what restrictions FAA would have, I don't know nothing about that.
I was asking, yeah, they're outside the fence, so there should be no,
Because I know we talked about extending that runway too.
yeah, they're on the outside and off the extended part.
Okay.
Carrie's talking about this fence line here.
Yeah.
If you can see that, and we're outside of that fence line.
Okay.
And then if he pulls back,
Mhm.
the only potential conflict will be in the future, there's going to be some clearing done on the end of the runway, so that loop might be impacted in the future. But that's something that we can indicate with signage and
That's
Okay.
supposed to remain kind of clear, isn't it?
clear.
Yeah. And again, these are all proposed,
Yeah.
if you decide to end it here, then so be it.
Right.
And it may not even be clear, that might be, there's certain areas there in the flight path that it might just be topped. So, we won't know until we get closer to the project what we're looking at.
I think dream big, and then if we have to cut scale back, we do, but
Yeah.
Right.
The biggest hurdle I see with the trails, the new yellow trails, is the permitting and any stream we gotta cross. Anyone gotta cross the streams and put like a little footbridge or anything like that. DEC just changed their wetland regulations, so there's gonna be some permitting hurdle to that.
We have tried to limit any crossings. Literally, I think the only crossing that we had proposed was down at the high school.
Right, right next by the high school track, just because there's not enough room on the east side of the creek.
Along the track.
I think Greg mentioned the wetlands by the upper part of the lower reservoir. There's
Yeah.
wetlands there.
Yeah, I think, I think in the short term, I would just say let's just go up the hill and detour a little bit around the wetlands. And if this is a popular trail that lots of people are using, if they're complaining that they have to go up the hill and down again in 5 years, then great, someone can find money to do a wetland delineation and a boardwalk. But for now,
Go around.
yeah, go around.
I mean, as a comparison, I think we spent something like $5,000 for the wetland crossing we did for Roundhouse Road.
Right.
Yeah, we had a hired consultant, they did a wetland delineation to help us do the permitting. And then once we got the permitting, we were able to build to put in the footpaths.
Is that because it was a known wetland?
The DEC regulations have changed now, it's not just known, it's also unknown wetland, so anytime we do a project, we're gonna have to hire a consultant to identify anything we might be impacting.
I see.
So you got any more questions?
Yes, kind of to show that there aren't wetlands,
Right.
in a sense.
Prove it one way or the other, huh?
Right.
Is that it, Mike?
That is it, thank you guys.
Bill, you got anything else?
Thank you.
This was fascinating, though, thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome. Like, you could probably captivate me for 2 hours. We could sit and
Yeah.
talk about this, but
So do we want to keep this on the next agenda as a placeholder for now, unless there's no need by the time we get, a week before, but
Sure.
something that we'll
Yeah.
plan to bring back to this committee,
Yep.
assuming?
yeah, we
Before it
can
goes
keep
in.
working on this and plugging away with them. And
Any of you have any questions, reach out to me or Mike.
Thank you.
all right. Any other business? Anybody want to go home or stay here for another hour?
I think it's time for
No.
you to adjourn this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.